Sarah Collins couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. The August sun had barely cut through the thick gray fog that hung over Bridgeport Cemetery, and the morning air was still cold against her skin. It was 2:15 in the afternoon on August 5th, 2023, the day of Daniel's funeral, but the weather felt more like winter. She shivered, pulling her coat tighter around her as she stood by the freshly dug grave. The priest's voice was soft, barely audible over the distant hum of traffic from Route 17. "Ashes to ashes, dust to dust," he recited, his tone measured and calm. But Sarah couldn't focus. Her eyes kept drifting to a figure at the edge of the cemetery, a woman, dressed in black, her face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. She was standing just beyond the cluster of oak trees, far enough to be unnoticed by most, but close enough for Sarah to see her shoulders trembling, her posture tense. Sarah felt a pang of recognition, though she couldn't place why. She looked around at the small gathering of mourners. No one else seemed to notice the woman, who appeared to be crying, her hands shaking. A single red rose dropped from her hand, its petals scattering across the dewy grass. Who was she? Sarah's pulse quickened. She had seen this woman before. She was sure of it, but where? As the last few mourners offered their condolences and began to leave, Sarah started toward the woman, determined to find out. But before she could reach her, the woman turned and walked briskly toward the cemetery gates. Sarah hesitated, torn between staying at Daniel's graveside or following this mysterious figure. She finally decided to follow, but by the time she reached the gates, the woman was gone, vanished into the mist. Later that evening, at 7:20 in the evening, Sarah sat alone in her dimly lit kitchen, her thoughts heavy with unanswered questions. The silence was broken only by the slow tick of the old clock on the wall. She glanced down at the stack of paperwork in front of her, the death certificate, the coroner's report, insurance forms, all reminders of how quickly life could unravel. Daniel's death had been sudden, a heart attack on a deserted stretch of Route 17 just a week before. He had been alone in the car, his phone off, his wallet missing. Nothing made sense. Sarah let out a sigh, running her fingers through her hair. She reached for the pile, rifling through the documents again, hoping to find something she had missed. Amidst the papers, her fingers brushed against a plain white envelope, its surface smooth and unmarked. She paused, then tore it open. Inside, a single sheet of paper folded neatly in half. The message was typed in black ink, short and cryptic. "He wasn't who you thought he was. She deserves to know the truth." Her breath caught in her throat. Her hands trembled as she read the message again, trying to make sense of it. Who had sent this? And who was she? Her mind raced back to the cemetery, to the woman with the red rose. Was this a coincidence? Or was there something more sinister at play? By 9 in the evening, Sarah's curiosity had turned into a gnawing urgency. She sat at her laptop, the blue light casting shadows across her tired face. She needed answers, and the only clue she had was the brief sighting of the woman at the funeral. She remembered one of the sympathy cards that had been left on her doorstep earlier that day. She pulled it from the pile and examined the envelope. There was no name on the outside, only a return address from Grover's Mill, a town about 15 miles away. The card inside was signed simply, Emily. "Emily?" she whispered, turning the name over in her mind. She quickly typed the name Emily Roberts, Grover's Mill, into the search bar. Her fingers hovered over the keys as she waited for the results to load. An image popped up on the screen, a professional headshot of a woman with dark hair, pale skin, and piercing blue eyes. It was the same woman she'd seen at the cemetery, Emily Roberts, age 35, a real estate agent in Grover's Mill. Her heartbeat quickened. Why had Emily been at Daniel's funeral? What connection did she have to her husband? Questions pounded through her mind, and she felt a chill creep down her spine. She looked at the clock. It was 9:35 in the evening. She knew she couldn't rest until she found out more. The next morning, August 6th, 2023, Sarah found herself driving to Grover's Mill, gripping the steering wheel tightly as she navigated the narrow, winding roads. By 10:15 in the morning, she was parked in front of a modest brick building with a sign that read, Roberts Realty. Her heart pounded as she pushed open the door and stepped inside. A bell chimed as the door swung shut behind her. Emily was at the front desk, sorting through a pile of paperwork. She looked up, startled. For a moment, their eyes locked, and Sarah saw a flicker of something: fear, recognition, maybe both. "Can I help you?" Emily asked, her voice calm but guarded. Sarah swallowed hard. "I need to know who you are," she said, her voice steady, "and why you were at my husband's funeral yesterday." Emily's face paled, and her hands gripped the edge of the desk. "I think you already know," she replied quietly. "You just don't want to admit it." Sarah felt a wave of nausea, a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach. She had come for answers, but it seemed she was about to uncover far more than she had bargained for. The truth was out there, but was she prepared to face it? The air inside Robert's Realty felt thick and tense, like a storm waiting to break. It was 10:17 in the morning on August 6th, 2023, and Sarah Collins stood in front of the woman who had been a stranger less than 24 hours earlier. Now, she was certain that Emily Roberts held the key to her husband's secrets. Emily's face remained calm, but her eyes darted toward the door, as if she was calculating her escape. "I think you already know who I am," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. "No," she replied, forcing her voice to stay steady. "I don't know anything, but I'm about to find out." Emily glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 10:19 in the morning. She hesitated for a moment, then gestured toward a small office in the back of the building. "Let's talk in here," she suggested. Sarah followed, her mind racing. The door clicked shut behind them, and Emily motioned for Sarah to take a seat. "Daniel was my husband," Emily began, her tone cold and measured. "We got married 2 years ago, on June 15th, 2021. He told me he was a widower. I never suspected anything until yesterday when I saw you at the funeral." Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "Married," she repeated, disbelief flooding her voice. "That's impossible. We've been married for 10 years. He couldn't have married you 2 years ago, unless—" Her words trailed off, the implication too shocking to finish. Emily nodded slowly. "Unless he was living a double life," she finished for her. "And I think you know that's exactly what he was doing." Sarah's mind swirled with images of Daniel, the late-night phone calls, the unexplained absences, the way he'd always kept his phone close, the times he said he had to travel for work. It all began to make a sick sort of sense. "But why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why would he do this?" Emily sighed, her expression hardening. "I don't know, but I have a feeling he wasn't just lying about his marital status. There's something bigger here, something he was hiding from both of us." At 10:31 in the morning, Emily reached into a desk drawer and pulled out a file, placing it on the table between them. "I found this in his things after he died," she explained. "At first, I didn't think much of it. Just some business documents, property deeds. But then I noticed the names. Your name, Sarah, was on several of them." Sarah's eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. Her name was indeed there, listed as a co-signer on various assets, bank accounts, properties she'd never heard of, insurance policies she had never agreed to. "He forged my signature," she murmured, the words barely escaping her lips. He was stealing from us both." Emily leaned in closer. "It gets worse," she whispered, as if fearing the walls themselves could hear. "One of the properties is a small house in Albany. I went there 3 days ago trying to find out what he was hiding. There were no records of him ever staying there. But the neighbor mentioned a man who matched his description, a man who came and went at odd hours, sometimes with a briefcase, sometimes with different women." Sarah's stomach turned. "Different women?" she echoed, a wave of nausea hitting her. "You think he had more than just us?" Emily nodded grimly. "I think he was using us," she said. "Both of us. Maybe others too. For money, for access, I don't know. But it doesn't end there, Sarah. There's something about his death that doesn't add up." Sarah's fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. "What do you mean?" Emily glanced at her phone. Daniel died at 3:40 in the afternoon on July 29, 2023. I checked his call records. His phone was active until 3:30 in the afternoon that day. 10 minutes before his death, he made a call to someone named R. No number, just an initial. The call lasted exactly 62 seconds. Then his phone went dead. Sarah felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. "Who is R?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Emily shook her head. "I don't know, but I've been receiving threatening texts since I started looking into this. Messages telling me to back off, to stop asking questions." Sarah's mind raced. She remembered the break-in at her house, the feeling of being watched. "I think they're watching me too," she admitted, "whoever they are." By 10:45 in the morning, the two women sat in silence, the weight of their realization pressing down on them. Daniel wasn't just a bigamist. He was a con man, a criminal, perhaps something even darker. But they were left with more questions than answers. What was he truly involved in? And how far were they willing to go to uncover the truth? Emily finally broke the silence. "We need to find out who I is," she said, determination flashing in her eyes. "And we need to do it fast, before whatever Daniel was caught up in comes after us next." Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of fear and resolve. She knew there was no turning back now. They were in this together, for better or worse, until they uncovered the truth, or it destroyed them. As Sarah and Emily set out to unravel the mystery of Daniel's life, they were about to learn just how dangerous the secrets he kept could be. The rain began to fall steadily against the windshield as Sarah Collins gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, her heart pounding. It was 8:45 in the evening on August 7th, 2023, and she was driving through the winding roads that led back to Bridgeport. The headlights cut through the thick fog, but her mind was foggier still, racing with everything Emily had revealed just hours earlier. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. After leaving the real estate office, she had caught sight of a dark sedan parked down the street, its engine idling. The car had followed her for several blocks before turning abruptly into a side street. She had hoped it was just a coincidence, but deep down she knew better. Back at home at 9:15 in the evening, Sarah sat down at her kitchen table, her hands still shaking. She needed to focus to figure out what to do next. The envelope Emily had given her earlier lay open in front of her, its contents spilling out. Bank statements, property deeds, and that mysterious list of initials, each followed by dates and dollar amounts. At the bottom of the list, the last entry stood out: R, $50,000, July 28, 2023. The day before Daniel died. Sarah reached for her phone and dialed Emily's number. "We need to find out who R is," she said, as soon as Emily picked up, not bothering with pleasantries. "I'm already ahead of you," Emily replied. "I've been going through some old emails Daniel sent me. There are references to an R, but never a full name. I think R might be involved in whatever business Daniel was hiding from us. Meet me at the Bridgeport Public Library tomorrow at 8 in the morning. We'll start digging." The next morning, Sarah arrived at the library just before 8 o'clock. She spotted Emily at a table in the back, her laptop open, several documents spread out in front of her. "I found something," Emily said as soon as Sarah sat down. "There's a property Daniel purchased under the name R. Investments in Albany, New York, just 3 months ago. The records show it's a storage facility and it's still active." "A storage facility?" Sarah frowned. "Why would Daniel need that?" "I don't know, but I checked with the property manager. The last time anyone accessed it was at 2:20 in the afternoon on July 29th, 2023, the same day Daniel died," Emily explained. "And here's the kicker. The person who accessed it signed in as R." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "We need to see what's inside," she said, her voice firm. "Let's go there today." By 1:30 in the afternoon, they were on the road to Albany, the miles stretching out before them as they drove in tense silence. They arrived at the storage facility at 3:05 in the afternoon, a nondescript building on the outskirts of town, surrounded by a chain-link fence and guarded by a single security camera. They approached the office cautiously. Emily took the lead, flashing a fake smile at the bored-looking clerk behind the counter. "Hi, we're here to check on Unit B12. We just need to make sure everything is in order," she said smoothly, hoping the bluff would work. The clerk glanced at his computer screen, then back at Emily, seemingly uninterested. "Sure, just sign in here," he said, pushing a clipboard toward them. Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she scribbled a false name. Her heart raced as the clerk handed them a key. "It's down the hall, second door on the left." They walked down the dimly lit corridor, their footsteps echoing off the concrete walls. When they reached Unit B12, Emily took a deep breath and turned the key in the lock. The metal door creaked open slowly. Inside, the space was mostly empty, except for a single metal filing cabinet and a large black duffel bag. Sarah's stomach churned with anxiety. "Check the bag," she whispered. Emily nodded and cautiously unzipped the duffel. Inside were stacks of cash, neatly bound in rubber bands, along with several passports, each with a different name but all bearing Daniel's photograph. "Oh my God," Emily breathed. "He was planning to disappear." Sarah's eyes darted to the filing cabinet. "There might be more," she said, moving quickly to open the top drawer. It was filled with documents, fake IDs, financial records, offshore bank account details, and a small notebook filled with scribbled notes and names. At the back of the drawer, she found a sealed envelope marked R. She tore it open and pulled out a handwritten letter. The letter was brief but chilling. "Daniel, you've crossed the line. If you don't pay by July 29th, 2023, there will be consequences. R." "Consequences," Emily repeated, her voice hollow. He was being threatened. Sarah's mind raced. So, R isn't just a partner or a client. It's someone who had leverage over him, someone dangerous. At 4:10 in the afternoon, they heard footsteps approaching down the hallway. Sarah quickly shoved the papers back into the cabinet, and Emily zipped up the duffel bag. "We need to go," Emily whispered urgently. They slipped out of the unit and locked the door behind them, trying to act casual as they passed a man in a dark suit heading toward the office. His eyes lingered on them for a moment too long, and Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Back in the car by 4:25 in the afternoon, they sat in silence for a moment, trying to process everything they had just found. "We're in way over our heads," Emily finally said. "Whoever R is, they know we're looking." Sarah nodded, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. "We need to find out more, and fast, before R finds us." Emily looked at her, her expression determined. "Agreed. We'll start with those names in Daniel's notebook. Maybe one of them can tell us who R really is." As they drove away, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched again. A black sedan appeared in her rearview mirror, its headlights glaring in the fading light. "Stay calm," she whispered. "But I think we're being followed." Emily's eyes widened. "Then let's make sure we lose them, because if we don't, we might not live to uncover Daniel's secrets." The game was getting more dangerous by the minute, and they were running out of time. The dark sedan had been tailing them for over 20 minutes now, its headlights a constant presence in the rearview mirror. It was 10:45 in the evening on August 7th, 2023, and Sarah's nerves were frayed. She gripped the steering wheel tighter as they sped through the back roads of Bridgeport, her heart pounding with every twist and turn. "We need to lose them," Emily muttered, her voice tense. She kept glancing over her shoulder, her eyes wide with fear. "Whoever is, they're not going to let us keep digging into Daniel's life without a fight." Sarah nodded, her jaw clenched. She made a sharp turn onto a narrow side street, the tires screeching against the wet pavement. The sedan hesitated for a moment before following. "They're still on us," she said, panic rising in her chest. "We can't keep running like this. We need to confront them." Emily swallowed hard. "Pull over by the old mill," she suggested. "If they want to come after us, let's make them do it on our terms." At 10:52 in the evening, Sarah turned the car sharply into the gravel lot by the abandoned mill. The headlights of the sedan blazed behind them, blinding in the darkness. She killed the engine, and they sat in silence, listening to the rain tap against the roof. The sedan pulled in slowly, stopping just a few feet away. A figure stepped out, a man, tall and broad-shouldered, his face obscured by the shadows. He moved deliberately, his footsteps crunching on the gravel as he approached their car. Sarah's breath hitched. "Stay calm," she whispered, her hand slipping into her bag, fingers closing around the cold metal of the pepper spray she'd grabbed earlier. The man stopped just outside the driver's side window. "Sarah Collins and Emily Roberts," he said, his voice deep and steady. "I need you to come with me. It's not safe here." Emily leaned forward, squinting through the rain-streaked glass. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Why are you following us?" The man hesitated, then pulled a badge from his pocket. "Detective Ryan Mitchell," he answered. "Bridgeport Police Department. I'm investigating Daniel Collins's death. I've been trying to reach you, but you're making it difficult." Sarah felt a surge of relief mixed with suspicion. "If you're a detective, why didn't you just contact us directly?" she asked. "I tried," he replied, "but I think someone is intercepting my messages. We need to talk, now, before it's too late." Emily opened her door, stepping out cautiously. "Why should we trust you?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "Because," Detective Mitchell said, his tone urgent, "I know who her is, and if we don't act fast, both of you could be in serious danger." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Who is it?" she pressed. "Who's behind all this?" Mitchell glanced around, checking for any signs of movement. "Ruth Daniels," he said quietly. "She's a crime boss, and Daniel was working for her. He was laundering money through those properties. When he tried to cut ties, she came after him." Emily's face went pale. "So she's the one who killed him? She's the one who—" Mitchell shook his head. "No, but she ordered it, and now she's after anyone connected to him. That means both of you. We have reason to believe she's been tracking your movements since you started asking questions." A cold dread settled over Sarah. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Mitchell took a step closer. "You need to come with me. I've arranged a safe house, but we need to leave right now. Ruth's people won't stop until they're sure you're not a threat." Emily looked at Sarah, fear and determination in her eyes. "We have to go," she agreed, "but we're not stopping until we find out everything Daniel was hiding." Sarah nodded, her pulse racing. "Then let's go," she said, gripping the door handle. "But this isn't over, not by a long shot." As they drove away from the mill, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. They were heading deeper into the darkness, and there was no turning back now. The sound of sirens cut through the still night air at 2:15 in the morning on August 8, 2023. The safe house was surrounded. Sarah Collins watched from the second-story window, her heart pounding as police cars blocked every exit. Detective Mitchell had warned them, but it was too late. Ruth Daniels had found them. Downstairs, Emily Roberts was frantically packing a bag, her hands trembling. "We have to go now," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "They're going to kill us if we stay." Mitchell moved swiftly through the room, checking his weapon. "There's no time to run," he said firmly. "We have to hold them off until backup arrives. If we try to leave, we're sitting ducks." At 2:22 in the morning, a loudspeaker crackled to life. "This is Ruth Daniels' crew. Surrender now or we come in." Sarah's mind raced. She thought back to everything they had uncovered. The documents, the money, the threats. "They won't stop until they have the files," she realized aloud. "The proof that connects Ruth to Daniel's laundering schemes. That's what they're here for." Emily's eyes widened. "Then we destroy it," she said. "If they don't have the evidence, they've got nothing." By 2:25 in the morning, they were shredding documents, burning papers in a metal trash bin, smoke filling the room. The sounds of footsteps approached, heavy boots on gravel. Sarah's hands shook as she fed more pages into the flames. She knew they were out of time. Suddenly, at 2:27 in the morning, the front door burst open. Shots rang out, the room exploding in chaos. Mitchell fired back, yelling for them to take cover. Emily pulled Sarah behind the couch, her breathing ragged. 2 minutes later, a new sound emerged. Sirens, louder this time. Police backup had arrived. Ruth's men hesitated, then began to retreat. Within moments, they were gone, disappearing into the night as quickly as they had come. At 2:35 in the morning, the room fell silent. The smoke cleared and Sarah finally exhaled, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered, not quite believing it. Mitchell nodded. "For now, but Ruth won't stop. You both need protection." Sarah glanced at Emily, then back to Mitchell. "We've come this far," she said. "We're not backing down. We need to bring her down, for Daniel, and for us." As the dawn approached, they knew this was only the beginning of their fight against a much darker force.